All right. This is the day that the Lord has made. We'll rejoice and be glad in it. So, welcome everyone for another session of the series that we're in. The preservation of the Quran. Is the Quran perfectly preserved? As the Muslims always claim that the Quran has been perfectly preserved, letter by letter, word for word, and dot for dot. So we're gonna test this claim, and we actually did. And Muslims couldn't even get a great response from these sessions. And we still continue with the session of perfect preservations. So we had one of the scholars that was with us Saturday by Brother Alan Gills, who spoke on historical anachronism in the Quran, which was pretty really interesting about that even history contradict with the teachings of the Quran. And now we with our brother Temidayo Popola, who's going to talk about fables and fairy tales in the Quran. And many people don't know who is Temidayo. He is also one of the great Christian apologists in Nigeria. He also worked with Seasoned Apologists by the director called Brother Kuredi. So Brother Kuredi from Nigeria also have the channel Seasoned Apologists that love to inform Christians about the faith and does few debates with African work with Brother Jay Smith and other Christian apologists. And also, for some people who may not know, Brother Timidayo also have a website, an article called Why Jesus Apologetics. And it is very well informed, very well precise. I've read some of his articles and it's very mind blowing to know. And the article he just released is The Truth Behind Jeremiah chapter 8, verse 8. Misrepresentation, not textual corruption. So check it out. After this section, I'm gonna share his articles and what he does so that we can go and follow what his brother does. Okay, so I will say, let the Lord fill us in this moment, not just to win, but to also to inform so that we can be able to be edified and to win our Muslim friends to Christ. Lord bless Brother Timidayo so that he can be able to use by you so other people, Muslims, can have doubt and be able to place their faith in the true Jesus in Scripture. Amen. So, Brother Timidayo, floor is yours, and to start your presentation.
All right. Thank you very for that introduction, and thank you for bringing up the blog as well. Um, for now, I major on the what is it called? Bible contradictions. There's a section there that I created for Bible contradictions. Most of the ones that our scholars said is scribal error. Due to my research, thorough research, I discovered that they are not even scribal error. But we have to understand the historical context of the text and many others like that. So I'm going to 5,000. I'm currently on number 8 or so. I have about 10 in the pipeline that I'm going to drop, which I've scheduled for the time it's going to drop. So people can keep watching on that and be able to read from it. Thank you very much again, once again. And I want to appreciate this uh, body for uh, bringing up this opportunity for Christians to come together and review and talk about uh, preservation of the Quran and some other things that are associated with it. One of it is what I'm going to present here today. So, without much ado, let me quickly go to the presentation. So, today we are talking about fables and fairy tales in the Quran. To our Muslim brothers and sisters outside there, you may be watching, we are not here to insult your religion, and we are not here to abuse your prophet. But what we are doing is to actually look into your sources. If Quran claim divine authority uh, and claim that it is perfect, it calls for us to look at the source of that information. Is it actually what it claimed to be? And when we have critiques in the Quran, are they actually saying the truth about their criticism of the Quran? So that is what brought about this topic, fables and the fairy tale in the Quran. So are we, like I said from the introduction, the Quran claimed to be divine, to be of divine origin, and the Quran itself denies of myth and fable. So it's easy for a source to deny something, but the denier does not actually becomes truth until we can fact check the denier. For instance, if I say I am not a boy or a man, let me just use that. If I say I'm not a man, and somebody say you are a man, somebody has to verify if I have the attribute of a man. And if I deny that I'm not a man, and we could actually look at the facts that surrounded being a man, then definitely uh, my denial does not equate or equals to a fact. So I want us to look at the allegation that was brought by the critics of the Quran themselves internally, not external. It was Quran itself that brought the idea of people critiquing it. And if people are critiquing it, then we have to look for the evidence. So the Quran repeatedly tells us that Muhammad contemporary accused him of citing or reciting ancient tales, myth, and inherited story. I mean, the floating story around the Arabia that they are familiar with. So the Quran quotes the unbeliever as accusing Muhammad of incorporating into his alleged revelation myths, legend, and fables that were well known to the people of his time. So let's quickly look at some of the evidences from the Quran. The first one we read is from Surah 6, Ayah 25, where the Quran itself was talking, because we don't have uh, the evidence that those people are actually engaging Muhammad. But since we are dealing with the Quran, then definitely we have to look at what the Quran says. So Surah 6:25 said, among them are some who give ear to thee, but we have put veil on their hearts that they should not understand, and deafness in their ear. And even if they see if every sign, they will not believe therein. So much so that when they come to thee, disputing with thee, those who disbelieve say, this is nothing but fable of the ancients. There is another one, which is Surah 8:31. We read that, and when our verses are recited to them, they say, we have heard. If we wish, we could certainly say the likes of it. This is nothing but a mere taste of the ancients. Then we have in Surah 16, Ayah 24, and when it is said unto them, what hath your Lord revealed? They said, mere fables of the men of old. Then we also have in Surah 68, Ayah 15 also, that when our revelation are recited unto him, he said, mere fable of the men of the old. Uh, then we read from 83:13, who, when thou readest unto him our revelation, said mere fables of the men of old. So as we can see, the Quran was showing how people reacted to it when it was recited to them, or when Muhammad interacted with the people. They call it fable of men, fable of ancient, and the likes. But what we notice here is that we do not possess a single continuous dialogue between Muhammad and the accuser. What we see is the monologue. Muhammad reporting what other allegedly said, followed immediately by his own rejection or under the authority of his revelation. But what we never hear is that the story, which story triggered the accusation that brought the idea that people were accusing of, then what specific parallel the accuser noticed, then how Muhammad responded argumentatively rather than declaratively. But what we see Muhammad doing instead of evidence, what we see him doing is that we are giving authority, despite that there is no historical rebuttal to them, no textual clarification, only divine assertion. It's like saying that uh, I hit yesterday, and somebody say you did not eat yesterday, and I could not provide evidence that I actually ate yesterday, then the next thing is that I said God is the one that did that. So Muhammad just brought the authority and discharge that. Like I said the other time, we don't have continuous argument between these people, because I believe that such an engagement should not stop in that area. So since we are reading the monologue of Muhammad, then we know that something is fishing there. So let's quickly see the illogical rejection and defense of uh, what Muhammad did. Quran insisted that it is not a myth, legend, or borrowed story. It explicitly rejects the accusation that it contains tales of ancient. It should also interest us that instead of denying the charge that the Quran contains ancient myths, the author simply said that Allah was the one who sent down these tales. So we read that in Surah 25, ayah 4 to 6. And those who disbelieve say the Quran is not except a falsehood he invented, and another people assisting him in it. But they, listen, but they have committed an injustice and a lie. And they say, legend of the former people, which he has written down, and they are dictated to him morning and afternoon. Then we now have revelation of convenience. Say, O Muhammad, it has been revealed by he who knows every secret within the heavens and the earth. Indeed, he is ever forgiving and merciful. Can you see that instead of providing textual or historical evidence that no, this is not an evidence, this is not an allegation that is should be taken serious, the next thing is that we have a revelation to help further object or cover up for the mess. But the question is that this rejection, if we look into the history, can we find these voices within the history? Can we actually trace all these things that Muhammad actually called revelation? Can we trace them to a particular origin? Are they actually true? As people who allege him of that, are they actually true? I mean, truthful about what they said. So the Quran rejects the charges of tales and does not by itself establish that the charge is false. Just that it's just denying or without evidence. So why this accusation matter? The very key is inversion. The existence of accusation is in itself is evidence. You don't accuse a genuine novel revelation of being ancient story. You accuse it when it sounds like something you have already had. In other words, the Quran unintentionally preserved testimony against itself. So what we see from here in a nutshell is that the allegation presupposes familiarity by the people who allege Quran of regurgitating the fables and the myth of the ancients, and the familiarity presupposes that presupposes proud circulation, that is a wide floating idea that people are familiar with, and proud circulation undermines the originality. So that is the logical argument that we can actually push forward. So let's further look at this logical analysis, and I've created a premises which says that for any accusation of myth and fable to arise at all, the accuser must have recognized recognizable story pattern, that is, story they have heard before. So, and we read the other time that when Muhammad was engaging them, they are telling Muhammad that, see, all these things are not new. We are aware of this. Your accusation, what you are saying is not new to us. We have heard of it. So Muhammad now trying to cover up does not solve the problem. So you will agree with me that this accusation of myth and fable is something that is not, that is genuine and is not false at all. So, like I said the other time, the accusation could not have arise. Could not have arise unless the narrative sound familiar, the theme resembled known legends, and the content match circulating folklore. People do not accuse something of being old tales, unless it actually resembles the ones or the old tales or the one they already know. So, like I said the other time as well, uh, Quran does not provide or does not distinguish history from legend, no correct known false element, and it does not provide independent verification. It simply declares it as revelation. So, what do we mean by myths? I want us to look at what we mean by myth. Myth and fable are traditional, often oral story used to explain the world or to teach lessons. Myths are associated, or I mean, are sacred narrative featuring gods, heroes, and comics origin. While fable are short tales, often with an anthropomorphized animal character that teaches explicitly moral lesson. Fable typically ends with a clear, direct moral. So, of recent, I saw a video of what is it called? Shabi Ali engagement with David Wood, whereby Shabi Ali admitted that Quran actually employ the legends and the fables to teach a moral lesson. It is not, even though the Quran does not present it that way, and Quran does not say that what he is presenting it has to do with moral lesson in that sense, but Quran say that they are actual word of Allah. That is where the problem lies. If Quran had not made a claim of divine revelation that it was being revealed to him like that, which is something that is already known to the people of Arabia at the time, even that we know that Muhammad of himself must have heard or knows about it, then what they are pushing to him as allegation is actually true. Therefore, Allah making it a revelation to himself is problematic. So, like I said, the myth is not automatically a lie. In intent, it is a sacred narrative that explains the world, but it is not historical true. So, for example, somebody talking about a genie, or let me say a bird speaking English. You know, if I tell a bedtime story to my child, like in Nigeria, there is a story we call tortoise and rabbit. So you tell the story to the children to make them sleep. So that is exactly what Allah is doing here, telling a fable, telling a old time fables and myths to teach a moral lesson. I don't know which kind of God will do that. That means that Quran is not presenting is an historical fact. It was actually doing what we call retelling of a story that are not true, and that thing cannot be called the word of God. So the problem is not moral teaching. The problem is presenting myth as divine history, which is a problem for Islam. So the method that we will use in this analysis is textual comparison. We are also going to do historical chronology and source criticism, the internal consistency. So let's quickly talk about the external myth borrowed into the Quran. I've seen one of the presentation earlier that talk about uh, what Dukanim or Alexander the Great story in the Quran. That's the one that was presented 6 days ago. But in this one, I'm going to be very brief since we have people who have presented about it and it's not new in the apologetics cycle. So we have the story of Dukanim, who was referred to as Alexander the Great. So the Quran verse that recorded that is Surah 18. Surah 18 has a lot of fables and legends within it, like the seven slipper of the Ephesus, uh, the Dukanim saga, and all those things. So in Surah 18 of the Quran, we read that the story of Dukanim, literally, the two of called the two on. The identity of the Dukanim is contested, but it is only contested because it is true edification as Alexander the Great disprove Islam. as it is known historically that Alexander the Great was a Greek pagan, not a Muslim, as the story portray him. Nevertheless, we have tafsir like Tafsir Al-Jalalain on Surah 1883 identify him as Alexander the Great. So we are not the one forcing Alexander the Great. So we have Muslims themselves who identify what is called Dukanim as the Alexander the Great. And we also have Madudi in his tafsir of the same surah, who also admitted that in general that it has to do with Alexander the Great, and the character of Dukanim described in the Quran are not are actually applicable to him. So the surah, the Quran verse that we are to read is Surah 18, Ayah 83. But I won't read all. Okay, I will read the Quran, the entire Quran. But when we start looking at the evidences, how where it is, I will just go through so that I won't have to take much of our time. So we have Surah 18, Ayah 83 to 91. They ask you, O Prophet, about Zulkarnain, saying, I will relate to you something of his narrative. So this presupposes that uh, Muhammad is aware of that and is relating to them something that they might have understand or know of. So surely we established him in the land and gave him the means to all things. So he traveled a course until when he reached the setting of the sun. He found it setting in a murky spring and found a people in its vicinity. He said, Oh, Dukanim, you may enter, you either inflict a penalty or else treat them kindly. He responded, Whoever does wrong will be punished by us. Then we will return to their Lord, who will punish them with a horrible torment. As for those who believe and do good, they will have the finest reward, and we will assign them easy command. Then he traveled a different course, until he reached the rising point of the sun. And he found it rising on a people on a people for whom he had provided a shelter from heat. So it was, and we truly had full knowledge of him. So what this text is saying is that this figure called Dukanim literally is a literal figure that actually go to it, because some Muslims are trying to use metaphor and use it to depict that it's not Quran is actually telling a different thing. It's not a real figure, but we have people who have acknowledged that it's actually Alexander. So this man went to a place and he found a place where the sun set in the murky water, and he found it. He went another distance away and he found it rising from another place. So what we see is that this verse has a pattern that we can trace to a floating story at the time of Muhammad. So it's not something that is unique to the Quran, because even the Muslims are the one that call for this, because they want us to believe that Muhammad is just receiving, something that was a drop to him. And as we can see that people have already helped us to expose that in the contemporary of Muhammad, that he was telling the story they are aware of. And one of it is this story. And can we actually trace it to a place? So when we are in the course of the research, a lot of people have actually made sure that this story is featured in a clear parallel with what we call Alexandra Romance, which is also a legendary biography of Alexander the Great, though to have been composed in Greek, and later it was translated to other languages like Syria, Armenia, and so many others. So with that in place, let's go to one of the, because I compiled about 3 or 4 of this evidence from the Alexandria Romans. We have in book 1 of Alexander Roman, the one that was translated from Armenia or either Greek, and the son of the sea, and the son on the sea, head of lion and spear, means something like this: from the rising of his sun to its setting, he will be a leader and he will make the city subject to his spear. Then we move on in the same book 1. After some days, Alexander wrote a letter to Darius and dispatch it without the knowledge of the messenger to his own satrap. It was to his if this effect King Alexander, son of Philip and Olympius, sent greeting to Darius, great king of the Persian, king of kings, sharing his throne with the sun god most high, the descender of God, the rising sun. Then we find in book 2 of the Alexander Roman, when the Darius received this and read it, he sent Alexander a letter of this sort. King Darius make this announcement to Alexander: "You have written me an arrogant letter where you ask us to meet you. Behold, have not passed and Korah to bring this God, and to the Orient to dwell where the sun set. And I bear witness before the gods to the things you have brought upon me. For I shall consider myself, my mother gone to the gods, that I do not have a wife, and the children do not exist at all." Then we also have in book 2 in the Syriac version, "I who with the sun traverse the world." We also see in the book 2 Armenia, "And we did not see the sun again, but went on through the darkness for 10 days." So that is, it was describing how the sun disappear at a point. In Alexander Roman book 2, the Armenian version again, we read that, "And in 2 days we came to a place where the sun does not rise." So you can see the pattern and how it parallel the Quran. So another one said that a king was ruling near this land of sunrise. Then we also found in book 3, and this happened for 3 days, and for the 5 days the sun disappear. So if you look at the pattern of this sun rising, sun setting, about a man of two on, which is what we call Alexander Roman, we also find that pattern in the Quran of a man who went far to a place and find a sun setting in the murky water, and also when went to another place, he find it rising from another angle. So looking at this, you see that Quran is incorporating a floating story that is around the Arabian area at the time. I want to quickly go to the second one, which is part of Surah 18, the story of Gog and Magog imprisoned behind a wall. There was a time I saw a video of Yasha Kadi, who went to China and saw a wall just to ensure, because a lot of scholars are saying that this this story of Gog and Magog that was reported in Surah 1894 to 98 was actually a real story. But I heard Yashakad is saying that it's not something to be believed, that that story cannot be true. So, and the question is that if the story is not true, then there is a problem with uh, what the Quran recorded. But the question is that can we find this story somewhere else that is proud to Muhammad? So we in Surah 1894 to 98, and we have it in 21 to 96. Is about a monster, the apocalyptic monster sealed behind a barrier, a wall, and it was borrowed from biblical. You know, we have Gog and Magog in the Bible, in the book of Ezekiel, but later sources like some folklore that was circulating at the time of Muhammad, they amplify it, and it becomes something that that was incorporated into the Quran. So it was not actually the story of someone hiding behind a wall in the Bible, but it was actually about two figures who are going to battle with each other, who have battled with each other in the past, and who will in the future meet again and battle with each other. Some people have interpreted that to mean that Russia and the United States, a lot of people are beginning to, or Israel, people are beginning to uh, create different stories. And what happened is that, why do we have all these fables, all this expansion of stories? People look at stories, and where we have gap, people want to fill the gap. They want to see that what happened here, what happened here. Can we assume that this is what happened? And it becomes something that they tell to people. And when they are telling to people, people begin to carry it around as if it's something that that is true. So there is an apocalyptic folklore for that, and no, it's not historical and no geographical verification that there is a place called Gog and Magog. Gog and Magog is not a place; it's actually a people, not a place. So we also have seven slipper of the cave in the same, like I said, that we have a lot of the way Quran create itself is to match different story together. It will have head, it will not have tail here. It will have tail here, the middle is missing, and before you know it, it jump to another place. And so seven slipper of the cave is also about some youth who sleep for century, and it's part of what Yazakadi also looked into and said it doesn't find people like this. How can people be in a cave living for is it 400 or how many years did they call it, that is not tenable, it's not coherent to have some people living. That what kind of God will leave people and keep them inside a cave with I think there was a dog there, so the talking dog guiding the cave, and taking directly it was taken directly from Christian folklore, which is seven slipper of Ephesus, like I said earlier, and never treated as literal history in Christianity. In fact, the people of Christian history, they tell this story to talk about resurrection. So that is the essence of the folklore. They create stories to explain some uh, to explain some fact like resurrection. So that's why this came in. So Muhammad saw that as the word of God and incorporated it. There are many things that Muhammad heard and thought it was God word, and he made it into the Quran. And I don't want to go there because I'm not talking about actually source of the Quran. So we have that one, which was taken from somewhere seven slipper of Ephesus. Then we also have Solomon controlling jinn, wind, and talking animal. That can be found in the Surah 27, ayah 16 to 19, then Surah 34, 12 to 14. In fact, this one is fascinating because looking at the story, you discover that it's not something that comes from the Bible at all. And if you read it, it is bizarre. It's not something that you will read and think this can be true. For instance, Solomon died for years and nobody knows he was standing with his staff until termite came and hit up the staff, then he fell down. People are aware. What kind of story is that? And this story, if you look at it critically, you will find it in Jewish sources like Talmud, Mishnah, and all those stuff. So this one also, you can find it. It's talking about the ant speaking uh, full sentences in the Quran. Bird understand theology, demon building structure, and so on. And this story actually comes from Talmud and Midrash folklore. So it's not the and no Jew treated it as historical. In fact, they came up and a modern rabbi actually explained that they are just bedtime story that they tell people. Is not to be taken literally or historically. You also have Iblis as a cosmic rebel with physical access to heaven. So I think Muhammad here was trying to either talk about the story of the book of Job or what. So and trying to see how devil rebel do this, and he just packed a lot of things together because we have a lot of Quran verses for that. We have Quran 15, 16 to 18. We have Surah 37, 6 to 10. We have Surah 67, verse 5, who talks about different stories. If you look at those stories, they are not coherent at all. They are not even uh, of any significance. So he's talking about devil eavesdrop in heaven, metro chasing them away. That is using stars, shooting star to chase the devil around. Then metro chase them away, and it reflects pre-Islamic folklore. So it is a mystical or mystic cosmology, not actually something that is real. Also, we have angel bowing to Adam. In fact, that one you can find it in Surah 2, ayah 34, Surah 7, 11, Surah 15, 29 to 31, where you read that Satan was asked to prostrate to uh, to Adam, and he rebelled against that, and because of that, there was havoc in heaven, and he promised to frustrate the creation of Allah. So angels commanded to prostrate before a human, and you can read that story in the Bible as well, but in another sense, that the Jewish in genealogy and mythology reshape the story to ensure that they tell a theological story. So, if you read the book of Hebrew, you will see that the Bible said that when the angels gathered together, and it tells God told them that they should worship a Christ, which Paul tried to prove. So, this story is exactly what Muhammad is trying to portray, that all angels were commanded to portray to humans something that is considered shirk, and Satan refused. This story is absent from Torah again, but we can find it in the Jewish uh, angelic myth. So it is a theological myth that the Jews later found in the Jewish sources. Then star as a missile against demon. You see that in Surah, I think I mentioned that Surah earlier. Surah 67, ayah 5, 72, ayah 8 to 9. Shooting star as a weapon against Satan. Then there is a universal ancient superstition, no symbolic clue in the text to tell us that it's true. Also, we have mountain. This one, I discovered it about last year. Most of the list I found with a scholar who have worked on this. I didn't find this until I was reading the Talmud, that I found out that something like this actually happened. The same thing with the Allah turning Jews to pig. And we have always said that there is no single historical evidence that any Jew actually becomes ape. So where do we find this story of Jew becoming apes? It's just a diversion. I'm coming back to this. I didn't include it in my list. Um, if you look at the Talmud, you will see that there are some people who were building a tower that will reach heaven, and because they disobeyed God, God caused them to behave like animal. So some of them were behaving like monkey, some of them were behaving like pig, some of them were behaving like dog. So Quran took this narrative and reshaped it and incorporated it into the Quran and nailed it upon the Jew, that they disobey the Sabbath, the law of Sabbath, so Allah caused them to become pig. He said, "Be ye pigs." So it was when I was doing research last year or so that I found that text in the Talmud, but I forgot to include. So this one, the mountain lifted over the Israelites. You have heard in the Bible, you have read in the Bible where the seven elders of the Israelites went with Moses on the mountain of Sinai to meet with the Melach Yahweh, the angel of the Lord. And on getting there, there were a lot of things that happened there. But we read in the Quran, that's Surah 2, ayah 63. And when we took your covenant and raised the mountain above you, that's what we read, that there was a mountain that was raised above them. In Surah 7, ayah 71, when we lifted the mountain above them as if it were a canopy. So this is what the Quran, is presenting, that there was a mountain that was lifted above them. But it's not actually in the Bible, not because Bible is silent, because people may say, the Bible have been corrupted, so they remove it. No, it's not that the Bible did not contain those information, but this one was actually an expansion when the Jews were telling story to their people, or when they are interacting in their synagogue. They argue things, they create story, and from there they fill in the blank spaces, because people were saying that how were they not how were they able to see God and they were not destroyed, according to the sources in the Talmud. So what the Jew now say in the Babylonian Talmud, Shabbat 88a, we have we have it read that the Holy One, blessed be He, overturned the mountain upon them like a barrel, and said to them, "If you accept the Torah, good. If not, there will be your burial." So as you can see, this what is it called? The Talmud was actually talking about a mountain that was overturned above them, a mountain that was overturned uh, upon them. The same thing Quran regurgitated. And how did Muhammad get to know? Because Muslims were asking, so how did Muhammad get to know that Muhammad related with the Jews, Christian, and every other person? Don't forget that Muhammad was a caravan. He buy and sells. He traveled far and near to Syria, to far places, Egypt, to do things, to do business before he claimed that he becomes a prophet. So Muhammad will have learned about it. Even when he started his ministry, it was in the Medina that he started this ideology, and he must have had all these things from there and believe that maybe they are talking about Torah, then believe that they are the word of God and put it there. And we also have the Jews who admitted that this story is not to be taken literal and is not to be taken as historical. Like Maimonides Rambam, he said in the Guide for the Perplexed, part 2, chapter 43, he said, this story in the book of Agada, which is a non-legal rabbinic narrative, said, are not to be understood literally, and many are parables and imaginative construction. So that is a confirmation from Rabbi that the story that God lifted Mount Sinai upon them and they used it to cover them is not to be taken literally. We also have another admission from another rabbi, Abraham ibn Ezra, who said that it is homiletical storytelling. It's not. It's an expansion and not to be taken as literal. We have another one like Sadia Gaon. Also, he said that it's a moral instruction, rhetorical teaching, imaginative instruction, not historical report. Also, we have a modern Jewish scholar, Jacob Nosser, who said that the theological is a theological and imaginative discourse rather than uh, historiography. So, as you can see, this is a mainstream academic consensus who agree that that story is not truth, it's not the fact, it's not historical fact, it's just a discourse, imaginative discourse. Also, we have the earth on the back of a whale. In fact, this particular one, we Christian needs to look at this verse, Surah 68, ayah 1. If you see what the tafsir, a lot of things that they discuss about this. If you look at it, you will see that Muhammad has been familiar with all this, or maybe some Jews, because maybe the 10 wise Jews who converted to Islam at the earlier time are the one that were writing this thing for Muhammad. We don't know because the Quran we read earlier said that it was written down for him and read to him morning and night. Or so we could have known, it could have been all these Jews that were writing. Said, known, Surah 8:1, known by the pen and by what they write. So actually, the Quran did not explain uh, thoroughly what this actually means. But we have early scholar who openly taught that the earth rests on water and the water rests on the giant fish, a whale, yes. Then the fish rests on further cosmic layer. And if you look at ancient mythology like Babylonian mythism, Jewish mythism, you see all these things there. What is funny is that the tafsir of Al-Tabari actually mentioned it and it explained it further. He said Nun, which is the fish, is the name of a giant fish. He said the heart is placed upon its back and the fish dwell in the comics water. Then we also have Talabil, who said that a cosmic way, heart placed upon it, mountain as a stabilizer to prevent movement. We also have other one who's like Akutubi, he said none as a cosmic fish supporting the heart. So, and we have it also in Jewish folklore. If you look at the Talmud and Midrash, we have comic water and we have giant fish like Leviathan that was mentioned in the book of Job. They actually quote the book of Job in that text, and so then the heart supported the art supported or stabilized by that creature. This idea belongs to Agada, not Torah history. Also, we have Solomon flying carpets, wings, transport as well. We read in the Quran 21:81, and Solomon will be subjected to the wind, forceful flowing at his command towards the land we had blessed. In Surah 34:12, we also read that and to Solomon we subjected the wind in morning journey was a month's distance, and in evening journey as was a month's distance. Then Surah 38:36. So we subject the wind to him, blowing gently wherever he uh, directed. So in Tafsir, we read that, or Atabari, as Solomon, it was said that Solomon rode the wind, often seated on a platform or a carpet. Uh, what interests me is that in the early story of the Quran, I mean of Islam, we have read of story of the genie flying on a flying carpet, and we also read the story of Zaid, who always sit down on the carpet meditating in a cave. And when Muhammad sneaked into him and asked him about what did he saw, he said he saw a flying carpet. So this connection of flying carpet on a wing, or what is it called? Somebody flying on a material world is common in among the Jews. And the Zaid we are talking about is actually a Jewish boy who Muhammad met at the earlier stage. So Muhammad was actually telling a story. Solomon rode the wind and often seated on a platform or a carpet, transported with his army. Also, we read in the Targum Sheni on Esther 1, Solomon possessed a flying throne, transported through the air, commanded winds and spirits. Also in Babylonian Talmud, Gritty 68a, Solomon controlled the wind, demon and supernatural forces. So you can see connection between uh, this story or folklore from the Jew, or the legend from the Jew, and what the Quran is actually presenting. So looking at this entirely, we can see that Quran is filled with a lot of fables. There are many others that I did not incorporate here, but we saw that Quran presented a lot of things that are not historical at all. So no historical corroboration for that, just some folklore from Jews, from Zoroastrian, from this and that. We can actually see that. Uh, Also, before I go to so why are we doing this? This is not a mockery, it is critical examination. We are not attacking people, culture, or ethnicity. We are examining claims that presented themselves as final perfection, or final, perfect, and timeless revelation. Any text that claim divine origin, moral authority, historical accuracy, intellectual supremacy must go through open scrutiny. So the Quran itself was this discussion that we had. The Quran repeatedly denied criticism by saying these are not but tales of the ancients, that denies the create a distasteful claim. If the Quran truly contain no myth or fable, then identifying mystic material is a legitimate scholar exercise, not hostility. Then denial is not a refutation. A key point we should emphasize whenever we are engaging Muslim is that the Quran gives us only monologue, not a dialogue. We do not have full argument of Muhammad critics and their details and objection to what the Muhammad actually said. We only have the denial of the charge and elevation of himself as the authority or a revelation. But actions do not rise in a vacuum. Like I said, people do not accuse a preacher of telling fairy tale unless the material sound like fairy tales. So the pattern is not isolated story. We are not pointing to one strange story. We have done with a lot of them. We have observed a pattern. Uh, Quran is vague in some of the presentation. We can see some of this in the later tradition or earlier tradition, either oral or written down. Like the earlier Jewish source, Persian and the Near Eastern folklore, are later defended as a literal history in the Quran. So this is a textual, not emotional argument. The consequence of this is that the story are not harmless. Anyway, they are used to justify absolute authority, unquestionable obedience, punishment for disbelief, suppression of doubt. When disbelief is unfavorable, story is treated as a moral crime. Evidence becomes a moral obligation for the criticism. So after looking at this, our goal is not to insult faith, like I said, and we have never insulted anyone, but to distinguish between revelation from inherited mythology, assertion from evidence, and a belief from history. So thank you very much for the time. God bless you.
Okay. Thank you for that, Brother Temidayo. Today's presentation on fables and fairy tales in the Quran, comparing the Quranic scripture with uh, Talmudic scripture, and also some commentaries and that contradict history, especially with Dokanim, Surah 18, that talks about the sun, which also confirms in the Hadith as well, Sunnah Abu Dawud, which is very, very wonderful to just show the fairy tales, the fables that's found in the Quran, which doesn't even make any sense. Even the pagans understood the fairy tales that, oh, those things we've heard them already. But if the pagans understood that, so that just shows that Muhammad did not get them by revelation, but plagiarized these verses. You know, uh, Brother John, I'm not sure if you want to add anything based on what the presentation being said.
Not much. He did a good job covering the issue of how the Quran takes from these stories. And so the Quran essentially doesn't really offer an account for why. It explains that people criticized Muhammad for this, but his response was essentially just denying it and saying that, oh, Allah has revealed all this. He's all knowing, all merciful, but it doesn't offer an account for these stories that seem to come from texts like the Talmud and I think the Alexander Romance there on the slide that the brother here is walking through. So these other texts that seem to be more fringe texts, right, not coming from the Torah or the Gospel or a source that the Quran, verifies. It's coming from myths. And what's interesting about that is, you can ask, why didn't Muhammad challenge this? You could make the argument that he actually wasn't aware of this because, and this is something I like to say often, Muhammad sort of incorporated things into the Quran by listening to. He's called ear in one of the ayahs of the Quran, and he listens to what Jews and Christians say, and then it gets written down. So, for example, he may hear them saying God rested on the seventh day, and he thinks, no, that can't be. And so that then in the Quran, we start seeing the Quran trying to deny that, saying, oh, well, Allah didn't rest, right? So, and that creates problems because that's not even what Genesis 6 means. But setting that aside, you can see how Muhammad may have heard such stories circulate and think, oh, yeah, that's going in there, and not realize that, wait a minute, these are myths, right? So that is, I'm not necessarily saying this is accurate, but that's one route you can go with this as to why Muhammad did this. But other than that, I think it was a good presentation to just explain the issue with the Quran here and not giving an account for why it has these stories in there.
Okay, nice one, nice one. Christian apologetics. Not sure if you're there. If you want to say something or even questions.
Yeah, thank you, thank you, thank you, Brother Temidayo, for the presentation. It was
You're welcome.
insightful and very informative. Yeah. So, I mean, I think we've done this topic before, but I think Brother Temidayo's version is kind of in depth and more detailed in the sense that he looked into more of these um, fables and fairy tales in the Quran. But we only looked at some few things because we had to make a discussion along the way. But uh, one of the points that Brother Temidayo made, which I so much love, is the fact that so folks, Muslims, whenever if I listen to this, understand the fact that we are not saying that Allah, because I love to use that since Muslim says the Quran is a verbatim word of Allah, so I believe Allah is one speaking here. So we are not saying that Allah using fables and fairy tales in the Quran are actually wrong. It is not a bad thing to use. You can say it, but the fact that Allah, the fact that Allah made these fables and fairy tales to be real, actual historical events, that's what the problem is. Because now, when you have a God who actually looks at myths and fables and tells you that these myths and fables actually happened. Take, for instance, the story about Jesus Christ speaking when it was a cradle. Then the question is that, so this thing happened. So Jesus Christ actually spoke when he was a baby. Then the question is that this is an historical event. And but when we go about and look at the historical account, we see that these actually were written in the infancy Gospel of Thomas, and these are apocryphal works that are not considered scriptural in Christian doctrines. So now your God now comes and tell you this as an account that actually happened. Then you have a question mark over there saying that what kind of God is going to say that these fables actually happened? This fable is actually an historical account, and you would when you if you should take the if you're actually going with the rhymes of the presentation of Brother Timidayo, you would see that he actually gave us an eye opening of the fact that this was not something that was actually alien to the Quran or to the Muslims. It was actually what the unbelievers, the pagans, had been complaining about when regarding to the revelation of Muhammad in the 7th century in the Arabian Peninsula when he began receiving revelation. When he began to say all of these words, they began to tell, look at, dude, we've had this thing before. These are fables. These are fairy tales. Come on. My grandmother usually tell me this back then when I was still a baby. Now you are telling me that this is a word from Allah. You are telling me that this is the word of God. No wonder most of them could not convert to Islam because when they were hearing this kind of a thing, imagine I'm a Nigerian, of course. Imagine me hearing the story of tortoise and uh and dog. Why tortoise
And
was yes, tortoise was stealing yam. So dog too was stealing something. So and then I grew up to about probably I was 30 or 40, whatever. And then somebody comes and tell me I'm a prophet of God. I said, no problem. Give me a revelation. He said the books are corrupt. This one is the only uncorrupted book. Then the next thing is that you deliver a revelation and say, you see the story of tortoise and dogs stealing food. Yes, that is true. And historical events. And I'm like, is your God that revealed this thing to you? Man, you cannot say this kind of a thing and not make the Quran a laughing stock. I mean,
exactly.
people will laugh at you, man. So it's they're inaccurate. And but Bola talks about the monologue in the Quran. And when this argument was pointed out for Muhammad, saying that Mo, look at this. These are fables and fairy tales. Then the next thing is that Allah stepped in and made a divine supremacy
Revelation.
declaration.
Mm.
Yes. So you do not, you cannot settle a doubt with that kind of word. Of course, you cannot. And what does this actually tells you about the Quran and the author of the Quran? Then you want to wonder, can God, the God we know, can he actually do this kind of a thing? When you read the Bible from Genesis to Revelation, look at the omniscience of God. Look at the wisdom of God. Even Paul says that the wisdom of God, I mean, the foolishness of God is wiser than the wisdom of men. Now when you look at this kind of analogy now you are telling me that your God does not have a better explanation for this kind of fables and fairy tales, and the next thing is that he claims supremacy of relation. Come on, you cannot look at this. And number two is it shows you that the Quran, the purpose of the Quran was just to get people to become Muslims, probably in the lifetime time of Muhammad, because even Muhammad himself prophesied that Islam is not going to last very, very long. He gave a time frame for Islam. So you will see that the Quran is very, very weak when it comes to apologetics. It does not know how to defend its own claims. Check through the Quran. What the Quran majorly does most is to attack polemics. It attacks other religions, attacks the pagans, attacks the Christians, attacks the Jews, attack, and it begins to bring out points that though they are illogical, but you will see them that if you're not learned, you think that they are logical. But when it comes to Islam or the Quran or Allah defending his own self or his own claim, then you see that Allah becomes very, very docile and begin to use words that you would imagine when Muhammad was confronted of not performing miracles. Now tell me what was the defense of Allah to Muhammad? You are not but a plain warner. Come tell me who's gonna how would you defend your prophet with just this flimsy excuse? When when Aaron I mean when um this man that went against Moses prophethood, what did God do to them? Korah, Dathan, and Abiram. The mouth, the ground opened up and swallowed them. That is how to shut up a doubt. That is how to shut up a doubt. But for the case of Muhammad, you are not but just a plain warner or a messenger. Come on, you cannot do that. So the Quran is very, very weak when it comes to apologetics. So and today, dialogue with any Muslims, they love to attack. And an example is our regular customer, Aladdin. When Aladdin comes, we check the live stream of last week. It was just a laughing stock. Why? Because he could not defend his claim. In short, he did not even know that there were historical record that the earth lose its light as a result of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. He did not even know. Now you see him keeping quiet and saying, "I want to learn. I want to learn. I want to learn." Why? Because he did not accept that there was an historical record for such an event. So that is Muslim for you, and it is not their fault. It is what the Quran is about. The Quran is a polemics book, not an apologetics book. So therefore, they do not know how to defend their claims, and the reason why they do not know how to defend their claims is because they do not have any proof. It is lack of proof. If they had proof, they could have defended. So Allah did not have a proof for the fairy tales and fables in the Quran. So therefore, Allah gives a flimsy excuse and an unapologetic excuse. So I think that's just what I have to say. Sorry for the
Yeah,
long talk.
no problem. I think let me quickly add something to that. Looking at Surah 4, 157, that Quran denies the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. Though actually I read it differently and I've used different arguments to prove that Quran was not denying the crucifixion in that text. And grammatically, I've tried to. I did a debate with someone where I argue and I proved that the text is not saying Jesus was not crucified at all. But the day, because if you read the verse where it say they boast, who are the they? Is required to. But where I'm not going there actually. I'm going to a verse or two verse before that 157 that they said that they allege Mary of committing fornication. If you read the text very well, you discover that no, if you read the Bible, no place in the entire New Testament was uh, Mary alleged of fornication or adultery. But when I was doing research, or because I have the the Jewish library Sephari on my phone where I used to read some of all this stuff, and I discovered that Muhammad actually had the story of a Mary called Bastarda who uh, was alleged of adultery. The name sounds similar. The word bastarda is a hairdresser. Miriam who was a hairdresser who lived before Mary, the mother of Jesus Christ, was accused of committing adultery with a Roman soldier. And if you go to social media, you see the Jews, the Orthodox Jews circulating the story that in their Talmud, Jesus was said that he's going to born in excretion, and all those stories are not referring to Jesus. They are referring to a different Jesus that lived 100 years before Jesus Christ of Nazareth. Even though the name Yeshua of Nazareth appear in that text, but it's not referring to Jesus Christ. That man actually lived before. But where I'm going is that the Mary being accused of adultery in the Quran was not actually the Jesus of the Bible, of the New Testament, but a Jesus or Yeshua who lived 100 years before Jesus Christ. And many other things that when we look into in the Quran, you can actually see that there are things that Muhammad overheard in Medina. Like, for instance, now, why the name of Jesus suddenly becomes Isa, or no, not Isa, Isa. We only call it Isa because the Muslim world have deceived us to believe that it's Isa. It is Isa. How did that name suddenly become Isa? Because if you look at the word in Arabic, it's exactly the same way they wrote Esau in Arabic. Go to Google now, type Isa in Arabic, type Esau in Arabic. They are the same morphology, and even though the phonology is a bit different in our English, but the same phonology and morphology in Arabic. So how did Muhammad get to know about this name Isa? Is because the Jew used to use code word for anybody they don't like they call Christian Edoms, and generally is a name they give to the Roman world, that they are Edoms, the Gentiles. But the Edom in the Bible actually was not Roman, and later on they used that word, they adopted that word and begin to use it for Christian. They call it Christian Roman. Why are they doing that? So during the time of Muhammad, they used to call the Christian the Nosora, and they used to call them, the Nosora was not actually Christian. They were the names, abusive word that the Jews used at the time against the follower of Jesus Christ. I mean, the people who follow Christ in Arabian Peninsula. And they used to call them the follower of Esau. So Muhammad came and thought it's a divine name and took that name and said, oh, this is the name, a divine name of that. Look at Yahya. Yahya also was not the name of John. Yahya and Johanna, they are not etymologically or phonologically or morphologically the same. They are different. So how did he get to know that name? Because the Zoroastrian were forced to adopt. I have scholars who have talked about this thing. They were forced to adopt what is it called, Abrahamic lineage, and at the end of the day, they begin to pick names and that was why Quran said that name has never been used for anyone before. So if it is John or Johanna, many people are bearing Johanna, even in Arabia at the time. So Johanna and Yahya, they cannot be the same thing. They are different names. So I have a presentation on this, maybe by March ending, to what is in the name. Then we can talk about, I want to talk about the name Allah and the word Ilah and all those stuff, and what their scholar actually say, because the Muslim world have deceived us so much. So that's what I just want to chip in about how Muhammad and pick floating story from different people and incorporate. Then lastly, let me just add this. That there's a theory that says that the Alif Lam Mim, Alif Lam Ra that you have on the Quran, you cannot find it outside any other places in the Quran explained. The only place you can find it explained is in the book of Psalm. Go to the book of Psalm, you see all this lettering there. And that gave some people to theorize that those Alif Ram on the Quran are code word that some Jew who wrote the Quran for Muhammad actually did to put, because if you ask Muslim what is the meaning, they will say, they tell you they don't know the meaning. And when you go to the Tafsir were saying that they represent Allah, Muhammad, and Jibril, the Trinity of Trinity. Anyway, but if you look at the Tafsir again, some of them are saying they don't understand. Only Allah know the meaning. So, but we have some Jew who said that they intentionally put that thing together as a code word for them to be able to know that any Jew that read Quran will know that this is coming from them. So I have that source that talk about that as well. So Muhammad is just unpicking story around the corner, floating story. Thank you.
Okay, that's very beautiful to hear. Even when you compare the historical background between Christianity and the the Quran, Islam, so we see it's two totally different things. And I would say this, that even when it comes to the fables in the Quran, we see that, and in the Quran we see there's plagiarism going on between either from the Torah or either from the Talmudic scriptures or even from the historical narrative and tries to mix it together, mingles with the Bible. Like as Christian projects mentioned, even when it comes to the story of Jesus, it doesn't match the historical Jesus. Because I had to find a scholar that says that, well, the Jesus revealed in the Quran is also matched with the historical Jesus. We can also trace Jesus back when he was in the cradle, speaking as a baby. We find that in the infancy gospel of Thomas, if I'm not mistaken. And we see that also Jesus was making a clay and breathed it in, became a living bird. Was that a historical Jesus? That was a fables from the Gnostic forgery. So we see that a lot of plagiarism happened, even from heretics that denies Christ. And also, most importantly, as we talked last week, is the crucifixion. The crucifixion, it was made to appear so. The Gnostic says it was made to appear so, and Simon of Cyrene actually replaced Jesus from the cross. So, and we see that even in the Quran, it is a fairy tale. We see that the Quran doesn't match the actual historical Jesus. And one thing I would, because even when the scholars like Bart Ehrman, E.P. Sanders, and first century historians, who did they go to? Where do they go to find information about historical Jesus? They don't go to the Quran actually, which is uh very interesting. Because if they would actually go to the Quran, they would know for a certain that the Quran is inspired. But they go to the Bible for information. Even the Muslims, they actually need the Bible to fulfill their stories. So that's a pretty great presentation. Thank you for that, Brother Temidayo, for your time, your patience, to leave your family for a bit and join us and educate us. That's something that's a topic that we're all learning. So we're not professionals as yet. We're still young, learning as young by God's grace, and continually to defend the faith, continually to do presentation on Islam, Christianity, and to go from there. Okay, so I've shared the screen on his article. So one more question: apart from the article, where can they also go to follow you?
Currently, I'm on Facebook. I have TikTok and YouTube, but I've not started using it because the internet is poor
Mm-hmm.
in my area. So I want to relocate to a better place so that I can have what we call fiber X from MTN run into my house so that we can I can have a better internet. So with that, I can be able to come online to my Facebook page. I have a lot of presentations, refutations that I want to do, and also on TikTok because now I think a lot of people are on TikTok engaging, and I think our presence there is also very key because Muslims have bombarded the place and they are spreading lies. So I have Facebook account, which is you can search for why Jesus apologizing or Temidayo Popola. You can find me there as well. So those are the pages I run.
Nice. Yeah. So as you can see on the screen, that's his website, his blog that he does. We defend the gospel of Jesus Christ, and this is what you're gonna see, which is very informative. So do look up to that. What I'll do as well is to take your article, your presentation as well, and then we'll also send it so they can relook at it as well. And Muslims out there, I would say that also read the materials and try to see if you can refute it, especially Aladdin. As he said in the commentary, he said Christian need the Hebrew Jewish Tanakh after corrupting it to fulfill Christianity. How, this is what Aladdin said in the comment section. How would you respond to that, Brother Timidayo?
He said what? I can't see.
He said
Can you help me display it on the screen?
Christian
Okay.
apologetics.
Okay, I see. That is not true. This is this is a fallacious argument because he assumed that Christian are the way that we call ourselves Christian today is the beginning and origin of Christianity. He has forgotten that the early Christians were Jewish and they used Tanakh. So that argument is not going anywhere. And we have had a message passed down to us from the same Tanakh and into the gospel, and from the gospel spread across the world, both by preaching orally and also we have church father writing about it. So we don't need Jewish Tanakh because we corrupted our own to fulfill or to corrupt it to fulfill any prophecy. No, bring anything that you want to bring. None of the, even till now, no single Jew could stand Christian, Jewish Christian in debate because they have to explain so many things. I have a place in the Torah, I mean in the Talmud, is it Talmud or Mishnah, that talk about 40 years, is it Surah or Talmud, that said 40 years before destruction of the temple, that whenever, no, 40 years after the destruction of the temple, when they pray, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Is that when they offer sacrifice, their sacrifice is no longer acceptable. When they close the door of the temple, it will open by itself. When they shut it, I mean, when they open it, it will close by itself. When they go to, when they put on light on menorah, it will snuff off by itself, and a lot of things. He said 40 years. He said even when they pray, God did not listen to their prayer. Now, what is he saying? He's saying that
I think he froze.
Oh, you froze.
Yeah, he froze. There's
Okay.
I think it's the network.
Yeah, the
Nigerian network
network.
will mess you up.
Wow. I don't think it's been funny. My question froze him.
the
What's your question, Nadine? It's Nigerian network that frozen.
question froze him. You see?
I want to tell him. I want to tell him that. I want to tell him. This presentation froze his profit. I. They will say this filthy Christian.
Yeah, cute Christian.
He just disappeared, bro. What the heck?
I think
He's gonna
he'll
join
come
back.
back. He'll come back.
I mean, Aladdin called me one time. He called me a filthy chicken.
Honestly, you have to understand. Not everyone understands your English as well. So don't think that because you speak English, everyone's gonna understand you. I don't understand your English sometimes, but I still cope with it.
Oh, he said the system went off.
I'm not sure if he's back. Are you back?
Yeah,
Is it
yeah,
back
he said
home?
his system went off.
His system don't know.
Oh, okay. Wow, that's bad. So I think we can close it now.
Is the system like the power or
Yeah, your laptop, the laptop. That's what it means. The
okay?
laptop. Yeah,
No worries,
the
no
laptop
worries.
one. Yeah.
Okay, after this, I'll message you. After this, no worries. Okay, so we can close it off. And thank you for
Yeah.
that as well. Thank you for the presentation. Really, really informative. And Winnie really needs to go back to it to learn something new. And I'll hand it over to Brother Christian Project Network and to close off.
Yeah. Thank you, ETM Apologetics. It was a great um, lecture on precision on is the Quran perfectly preserved, the fables and fairy tales in the Quran. Folks, the word has been given, the word has been presented to you. your duty is to fact check whatever we are seeing, if they are true or not. At least everything that was said was being displayed on the screen, and the Quranic verse was being shown, and you can see it yourself that this was actually what Allah said in the Quran. So it is now up to you to make the decision. If you are going to accept the fact that which is being told you today, that the Quran actually contains fables and fairy tales, and then the next question is that would God or the supreme God, the one who claims to be the wisest of all, would he actually take a fables and fairy tale stories to be actually historical events? If the answer is no, then you've 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 actually gone 90% away from Islam, because what you're actually saying in essence is this, that Allah cannot be the true God which we know, and number two, the Quran cannot be the God. I mean, cannot be a book from God. Most definitely must be a book that was created by man. So I think, oh, President Tayo is here. I think let us allow him to come in so he can.
All right, sorry, I'm joining with my phone, and
Oh, that'd be
I
good.
don't know what happened to the laptop that went off. So apologies for that. So yeah, you can continue with your closing.
Yeah. So as we are saying, so you make the decision yourself, and then hopefully it's our prayers, and we're praying for you that you come to the knowledge of Christ, and then you come to know the Lord, and you would experience the same joy and the same happiness we experience in Christ Jesus. So thank you, Brother Bubola and Temidayo, for joining us for this wonderful session, and hopefully we are hoping that when next time we call upon you, you will gladly oblige our call and join us for a session. So folks, from myself, young Christian, no, journey apologetics, it's apologetics and ready to reason. We say bye bye and God bless you. Till next week, remain blessed.